I am a barrister. I trained as a barrister, and I've been doing that since in the UK and of course also in Ghana.
So I was reading your profile and I understand you are the first and youngest lady. Are you the first person, female, to have the chambers at the Middle Temple?
To my surprise as well, actually, when I decided to set up chambers after I had practiced for a bit in another site where I trained, I decided to set up chambers in 2005, June. So I took my jolly self to the Estate Honorable Society of the Middle Temple, because I'm a Middle Templar myself. It's got the history. You have members of the royal family who are honorary members. You have the whole history about the Middle Temple. If you've watched the Da Vinci Code, it was filmed in the hall where I was called to the bar. I mean, there's good history to it. Having said that, I set up chambers before the Da Vinci Code was filmed. Nevertheless, that's the scene they chose. But I chose the Middle Temple because it's prestigious. It spoke about, history, and we have some good lawyers and QCs and judges that, are members of the temple, and I thought it was the best place to be. Of course, we have 4 inns of court, and before you're called to the Bar of England and Wales, you must belong to one of them. So I chose the Middle Temple to be my inn. This was some time in either to 1995, 90, something thereabout. So when I decided to set up chambers, I thought that it was the right place to set up chambers. So I went to the estate, I inquired, and the lady who attended to me after we had done the lease and everything looked at me and said, "You're interesting, you're very brave. In the history of the Middle Temple, this has never been done. You're the first black woman and the youngest I've come across who is setting up chambers." Boy, you know how they say we don't tell our age in public?
Well,
I did this in 2005 after I'd practiced for about 3 years. So that would make me what? Plus, well, mid to late 30s, let's say.
okay.
So that's about the range, yes. So I just locked that down in my spirit, and I thought, wow, this is awesome at this time.
How difficult was it for you?
It hadn't been done before. I suppose some other persons may have set up chambers elsewhere, I don't know, but I know that when I did it, it was quite a strange thing to a lot of people, including friends of mine. I mean, some of my friends fell off their seats. So today, whether or not they were playing or whether they actually did fall, we don't know, but we had to get them up their seat to sit down, to say, "Look, sit down, you're okay." And I've had other barristers questioning each other in my presence to say, was that even possible that she could set up chambers? She's only practiced for a little bit, and was this allowed? But of course, I went through the process. I had members of chambers at the time who were much, much older than me and much more experienced than I was. I mean, at the time, some had practiced nearly 30 years, and they came together and worked for my chambers. And I thought, I knew that a couple of people may join, but I had no idea that some of the people who came in would come in to join the chambers. I mean, I had my own pupil supervisor come to join. That's a plus. And very senior people at the time where I was practicing also came to join. Now, I need to say that the plan was, we're going through a transition. We were, I think, at the time planning to move chambers to another location. So there was quite a bit of toing and froing. And other people were then deciding whether or not they were going to stay within their chambers or whether they were going to join other chambers. And I went home and I didn't say anything. And it may sound insane to some people, but I went into prayer. And I thought, okay, what would you have me do, Lord? And I remember getting a phone call from my then pupil supervisor, because, well, I had just finished pupillage, but he was So like overseer of some sort, if you'd like. He was a very good, friend of mine as well. So we had a good relationship. He called me a couple of times, left a message on my phone urgently. We need to talk. We haven't seen you in chambers, and we've had a couple of meetings with other chamberses around the area. You need to come in. So I called him, and he said, "Where are you? What's going on?" I said, "Oh, I have something to tell you." And the first questions he asked me was, "What, are you planning to leave the bar?" I said, "No, far from that, but I'll come in." So long and short of it, I went in, and I told him that, well, this is what I've done. At the time, I had already done it. He was like, "You have set up chambers?" I said, "Yes, I have set up chambers." He looked at me and said, "Okay, where?" And I said, "Within the Middle Temple." He said, "Okay." But I suppose what they say, seeing is believing. Whereabouts in the Middle Temple was the next question. So I showed him where it was. Incidentally, is the building next to where that chambers used to be previously, and where I met him for the first time in 1994.
Oh. So you began with how many people, and how many people do you have now?
Because of the changes that happened with the bar in the UK, a lot of people have gone into either employed bar to work for companies rather than being in chambers. That's where they are relying on solicitors to bring in the cases. So the numbers fluctuate. There aren't that many of us now, but at the time we were about 12. And I was the head of chambers. It took a while to get my head around that. So sometimes you're standing there and somebody's calling head of chambers and you're still busy having your conversation, and then you click and say, "Ah, that's me." So, yes.
Are there any notable cases that you sit back and say, my chambers got that?
Oh, there's so many cases. I worked with one of the barristers. He was a senior member of chambers. So I was a junior to him in the case, and it was an attempted murder case, and we had 8 defendants, and so the courtroom was packed, and we were at the Old Bailey for like 3 months plus on one case. Every day you're there, and when it was all said and done, the only person that was found not guilty was our client, and that never left me. That never left me.
How easy or difficult was it getting your seniors to follow your line? Did you have situations where you said, "No, this is how we are going to do it," and they said, "No, from experience, this is how we are going to have it done"?
Up until I set up chambers, in fact, up until I became a barrister, I'd worked a lot with solicitors' firm. So I would normally go to court with these barristers as their outdoor clerk.
Okay.
So in effect, I was their clerk. So I'd done that for a long time, and I had a good relationship with all of them. So you can imagine now me being head of chambers and saying, "This is the Roots Chambers is going on. This is what we're doing or not doing." It was quite a bit difficult. But I must say, hand on heart, that they were just awesome, wonderful, wonderful people. And I'm not saying that just to, make conversation, but they were really good people.
First black lawyer there. How difficult, really, is it for professionals, this time not stowaway, professionals, to move out there and establish themselves? How difficult was it for you?
I suppose it depends on what you're coming in as. If, for example, you're a nurse, you come in, I think they have the exams that they take, and if you pass, and you can show that you're not recourse, you will have no recourse to public fund, because they're trying to, protect the public funds. And that's the whole thing. We need to start things like that here. Protect the public funds. Come work. Pay your tax. The tax looks after you and everybody else. So if you can prove all those things, then you go through the process and you get your status. It's not as straightforward as said, because you need to go through certain hurdles. It takes time. But eventually, you will get it if you come that route. And there are those who can afford it and invest their million or their £750,000 or their £500,000, and you can also arrive at that end. But I think I can speak for the lawyers. If you're a lawyer here and you want to go and practice in the UK, of course we're a Commonwealth country. We were colonized, so we do common law, and UK does common law. So what you would do is you will have to register yourself as a foreign lawyer. You go through a process. Some would register, it used to be called QLTT, or Qualified Lawyers Legal Test, or something like that. Qualified Lawyers Test, or Qualified, I can't remember but that's what the solicitors. So you go through that process and register yourself as a foreign lawyer, then attach yourself to a firm, and then you can practice. Or if you choose to practice on your own, and you think you have the clientele equally, you can do that. But you have to regularize your status before you get to that stage. But most people come in through education. So for those of us who went to study, obviously, like I said, things have changed. But in those days, when you have studied continuously for a certain number of years, there is an allocation in the immigration law in the UK that allows you to apply to settle in the UK. So a lot of people who have gone to study in the UK have acquired their status via that route.
Okay. How difficult is it for, say, yourself, other blacks, to go to a place like the UK and be accepted for what they do? Like a lawyer moves from here and go there, they will look at you and be like, no, I prefer even the numbers of, excuse my language, white lawyers than you. Do
It's common.
they face that?
It's common. Funny enough, our own people would prefer, I think majority, if I say our own people, then I'm looking at a single story. No, majority of our people would prefer, I want a white lawyer. We still have that thing at the back of our mind that the white man, I don't know if by reason of colonialization or whether it is because we feel less of ourselves. I am not sure what the answer to that is. But most people would readily prefer, it's a white guy, it's okay. They can do it. Whereas the black person will not just do it, but do it with passion. The black person understands where you're coming from. Law is law, cut across. If your case is good, it's the same act that is being quoted by the black person, the same act that is quoted by the white person. But having said that, sometimes I don't blame people who think that way, because we need to spend a lot of time on ourselves and keep updating ourselves. We have this notion of, I've become a lawyer. I was a lawyer 30 years ago, and I'm just sitting there with my 30 years knowledge. But things have moved on. Laws have changed. Improvements have come. So you need to update yourself. If you were in court and you present a case for a client who is an African like yourself, and you've done a good job, they would know. They would feel good. And even if the outcome is not the desired result, they would still be satisfied that you did all you could. So my advice to the young lawyers that I train is that you've got to go all out.
You keep mentioning the people who come through your law firm. Are there any notable names you can mention?
Well, my first pupil actually was the daughter of the ex-president, Jerry John Rawlings.
Oh, is it not?
Amina Rawlings.
Oh, Amina Rawlings.
Yeah. She was my first pupil. Finished the bar and she was looking for pupillage, and she wasn't getting pupillage. And I'm like, it's difficult to do the bar, and nobody's giving her pupillage, and the stories just too many. I'm like, well, why not? Why shouldn't she have pupillage? She's done the bar like everybody else. Now, pupillage in the UK is like gold dust. You don't get it. You scrape it and you don't get it, even for the white people.
Wow. So
you can imagine if you're an African person. And I decided, okay, fine. I'm going to take her on as a pupil. It was a long challenge, but I kept at it. I kept writing letters to the Bar Council and saying, you have to give me permission to take this person on as a pupil. And she did, went through, she passed, and she's a qualified barrister.
How good was she?
She was very hardworking, actually. I was surprised. Very hardworking and very focused. And
wow.
I didn't have trouble to, you mentor people sometimes and you're thinking, oh, it's a chore. But I think she had looked for it for so long that she was happy to have had it. So